My dearest Helen, I need your help. Just one last time. His name was James, and he was the charming, handsome engineer who had filled the crushing silence of my life with whispered promises of a future together. He thought I was just a lonely widow, an easy mark, a final big score before he disappeared forever. He thought my heart was bigger than my brain. What he didn't know was that the man I called my son, the one I was about to call for help, wasn't a local lawyer or a friendly neighbor. His name is David, and he's the assistant director of the FBI's cybercrime division. This is the story of a scammer who picked the wrong widow and walked into the most elaborate trap of his life. If you believe that karma has a badge, subscribe now and hit the notification bell, because you are not going to want to miss this arrest. The house had been silent for 6 months, ever since my husband, Robert, passed away. It was a beautiful silence at first, a space for grief. But it soon became a crushing, echoing loneliness. The nights were the worst. That's when I started playing online Scrabble, just for the human connection, however small. And that's where I met him. James. His profile picture showed a handsome, silver-haired man with kind eyes, standing on what he said was an oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico. He was an engineer, a widower like me. His messages were a balm to my raw soul. He didn't just flirt. He asked about Robert, he listened to my stories, he shared his own tales of loss. He made me feel seen for the first time in a long time. Soon, our chats moved from the game to a private messenger. He called me his sweet Helen. He sent me poetry. We would talk for hours, late into the night. He was building our future, he said. A house on the coast, a life of quiet comfort. There was always a reason he couldn't video chat, the spotty satellite connection on the rig. I chose to believe him. I needed to believe him. Then, about a month into our relationship, the first request came. It was small. A piece of essential equipment had broken, and he needed $2,000 to replace it quickly to avoid a project delay. He was embarrassed to ask, but his funds were tied up offshore. It felt real, urgent. And what was $2,000 to help the man who had brought light back into my life? I wired the money. He was so grateful, so full of love and promises. A few weeks later, there was a customs issue with a critical delivery. That was $10,000. Then, a medical emergency for a fellow crew member, for which he had fronted the money. $25,000. Each time, I felt a knot of dread in my stomach, a small voice whispering that this was wrong. But his loving messages, his detailed explanations, and my own desperate loneliness would shout it down. He was a good man in a difficult situation. He loved me. This was an investment in our future. I started dipping into the savings Robert and I had so carefully built, the nest egg for my old age. He was so close to coming home, he said. He just needed to clear one last hurdle. He just needed my help, one last time. Will this final plea for help expose a shocking secret? This story of a dangerous deception is just getting started, so keep watching. To understand how I could fall for this, you have to understand the man my husband was, and the son he left in my care. My Robert was a decorated detective with the NYPD for 30 years. He was sharp, intuitive, and had a bedrock sense of integrity. He was also a mentor. One of his proudest achievements was taking a raw, brilliant rookie under his wing, a young man named David Miller. Robert saw a spark in David, the same passion for justice that drove him. They became inseparable, and David became the son we never had. He was at our house for Sunday dinners, he helped me in the garden, he called me Mom. When Robert died, David was the one who held me up at the funeral, his grief second only to my own. David had risen through the ranks with meteoric speed. His brilliant, analytical mind was perfect for the new frontier of law enforcement. He was now the assistant director of the FBI's cybercrime division in Washington, D.C. He was a bona fide hero, taking down international hacking rings and online predators. But he was also incredibly busy, his life a whirlwind of classified briefings and national security threats. I was so proud of him, but I was also hesitant to be a burden. He had the weight of the world on his shoulders. How could I bother him with my silly online romance? I was ashamed of my loneliness, and later, ashamed of my secret financial loans to James. The antagonist, James, was a phantom, a construct of ones and zeros perfectly calibrated to exploit the vulnerabilities of a woman like me. His character, the handsome, lonely widower, the successful professional facing temporary hardship, is a classic trope in the world of romance scams. It's a character designed to elicit sympathy, trust, and a desire to rescue. He operated in the shadowy corners of the internet, a world I, a retired librarian, barely understood. He was a predator in a digital jungle, and my quiet, analog life made me the perfect, unsuspecting prey. He saw a lonely widow in a big house in a quiet American suburb and saw dollar signs. He never imagined that this quiet little house had a direct line to the heart of the FBI. The final demand was the big one. "My dearest Helen," the message began, "I have the most wonderful news. My contract is finished early. I can finally come home to you. But there is a problem. To release my final multi-million-dollar payment, the oil company requires a contract severance insurance bond. It's a ridiculous piece of red tape, my love, but it's the only thing standing between us and our future." The amount was a staggering $150,000. He promised he would pay me back double the moment his funds were released, which would be just days after the bond was paid. My blood ran cold. This was my retirement. This was the money Robert and I had saved for my security, for my future. Everything inside me screamed that this was the final obvious lie. But my heart, so tangled in his web of promises, ached with the possibility. What if it was true? What if this was the last step to finally having him here, to ending the loneliness? The conflict was a war within myself. I spent 2 days in an agonizing haze, unable to eat or sleep. I looked at the photos of Robert, his kind, steady eyes seeming to watch me with concern. What would he do? The answer was obvious. He would see through this in a second. He would be so disappointed in me. The shame was a physical weight. James's messages became more urgent, more manipulative. "Don't you trust me, my love? After everything we've shared? I'm risking everything for us, and you're hesitating." He was turning it around, making me the villain, the one with a lack of faith. He was a master of emotional blackmail. I was at a breaking point. I sat at my desk, my hand trembling as I held the phone to call the bank and authorize the wire transfer. I was about to ruin my life for a ghost. I looked at the picture on my desk, not of Robert, but of a young David, standing proudly in his FBI Academy uniform, with Robert's arm around his shoulder. And in a moment of desperate, last-ditch clarity, I dialed a different number. Will a secret from the past turn the tables? FBI Cybercrime Division, Director Miller's office. The voice on the other end was crisp and professional. "Hi, it's Helen Davies. Is David available?" "It's personal." The pressure was immense. Admitting this to David felt like a bigger betrayal than giving the money to James. He was the nation's top cybercop, and his mom had fallen for the oldest trick in the digital book. When David came on the line, his voice was warm but hurried. "Mom? Is everything okay? I was just heading into a briefing." I started to cry, silent, racking sobs. The dam of shame and fear had finally broken. "David," I choked out, "I think I've made a terrible mistake." The ticking clock was the wire transfer I had almost made. James was expecting the money by the end of the day. David's tone shifted instantly from busy executive to concerned son. "Mom, what is it? Talk to me." Hesitantly, my voice thick with shame, I told him everything. About James, the oil rig, the poetry, and the money. All of it. I expected him to be angry, to lecture me. Instead, there was a long, cold silence on the other end of the line. It was the most terrifying silence I had ever heard. "Mom," he finally said, his voice flat and hard as steel, a tone I had never heard him use with me. "I need you to do exactly as I say. Do not reply to him. Do not block him. Do not send any more money. I'm sending a team to you. They will be there in 2 hours. Just sit tight. And please, please don't be ashamed. You are not the first person this has happened to. But I promise you, with me, you will be the last one it happens to with this man." He wasn't my son anymore. He was the director of the FBI, and I had just handed him his next case. But will the next event shock everyone? 2 hours later, 2 quiet, professional agents, a man and a woman, were sitting at my kitchen table. They weren't intimidating. They were kind, respectful, and called me ma'am. They set up a laptop and, with my permission, began to analyze my correspondence with James. While they worked, David called me back, his voice now calm and strategic. "Mom, what this man has done to you is a federal crime," he said. "He's part of a network we've been tracking for months. They target seniors, they're ruthless, and they're very good at what they do. But he just made a fatal mistake. He targeted my mother." This was the turning point. The narrative didn't just shift, it was completely rewritten. I was no longer a victim on the verge of financial ruin. I was now the key witness, and the bait, in a major FBI sting operation. The shame I felt began to recede, replaced by a cold, unfamiliar fire. The anger. The desire for justice. Robert would have called it flipping a witness. "What do you need me to do?" I asked, my voice steady for the first time in months. "He's expecting $150,000, David said. "We're going to make him believe he's getting it. The agents there will guide you. You're going to reply to him, tell him you're getting the money together. You have to be convincing. You have to play the loving, trusting woman he thinks you are. Can you do that?" I looked at the picture of Robert on the mantelpiece. He had spent his life putting predators like this behind bars. This man hadn't just stolen my money, he had tarnished the memory of the love I had with my husband. "Yes," I said, my voice filled with a resolve I didn't know I possessed. "I can do that. Let's catch him." The lonely widow was gone. In her place was a woman with a mission. The scammer thought he was reeling in his biggest catch. He had no idea the FBI was now holding the rod. How will this shocking secret change their lives forever? This incredible twist has you hooked? Subscribe now for more stories of delicious justice. The next few days were the most surreal of my life. My quiet suburban home was transformed into a covert FBI command post. The 2 agents, Mark and Sarah, became my coaches and confidants. They set up monitoring equipment and worked with me to craft the perfect messages to James. I learned to be the perfect victim. I sent him messages filled with loving anticipation and feigned anxiety about the large sum of money. "I'm selling some of my beloved Robert stock," I wrote, a line crafted by Agent Sarah to make me sound both committed and vulnerable. "It's all for you, my love. For our future." The reaction from James was immediate and predictable. His messages became even more loving, more effusive. He was a shark tasting blood in the water. "My brave, wonderful Helen, you won't regret this. Our life is about to begin." He had no idea that every word he typed was being logged, traced, and analyzed by the FBI's top cyber forensic team. The consequence of his greed was that he became sloppy. Convinced he had me completely under his spell, he let his guard down. He gave me a specific set of wiring instructions to a new bank account, a corporate account for the insurance bond, he claimed. To the FBI, this was the final piece of the puzzle. It was a domestic money mule account, the crucial link in the chain that laundered the stolen funds. They now had a name, an address, and a direct path to the man behind the curtain. The power dynamic had completely inverted. He thought he was the puppet master, pulling my strings. In reality, he was the puppet, and I was dancing him straight into a federal prison. My transformation during that week was profound. I had started this as a shell of a woman, hollowed out by grief and shame. Now, I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since Robert was alive. The challenge was no longer just about catching a criminal, it was about reclaiming my own identity. I was not a foolish old woman. I was intelligent, I was strong, and I was a damn good actor. The agents treated me not as a victim, but as a colleague. They would brief me on the technical aspects of the case, explaining how they were using cell tower triangulation and IP tracing to pinpoint the scammer's location. I found myself fascinated, my librarian's mind soaking up the information. I even helped them. I remembered a small, seemingly insignificant detail James had mentioned weeks ago, a specific type of local coffee he missed. I told Agent Mark. That tiny detail helped the field office in that city narrow their search, cross-referencing his digital footprint with coffee shop locations. You should have been a detective, Helen, Mark said with a genuine smile. I was overcoming a lifetime of seeing myself as just a wife, a mother figure, a librarian. I was an active participant in my own justice. The vengeance was no longer just about getting my money back. It was about taking back my self-respect. David would call me every night, not just as the FBI director, but as my son. "You're doing great, Mom," he'd say. "Dad would be so damn proud of you." And for the first time, I believed it. I was no longer Robert's grieving widow. I was Helen Davies, special operative. The trap was set. The FBI had a name, Alexei Petrov. Not a handsome engineer on an oil rig, but a 30-year-old con artist operating out of a rented condo in Miami Beach. He was part of a small, slippery crew. The final confrontation would not be a dramatic shootout, but a quiet, precise digital execution, followed by a very loud knock on the door. The climax was scheduled for a Thursday morning. My role was critical. I had to initiate the final conversation with Alexei. The FBI had set up a fake wire transfer. I had to send him a doctored confirmation slip and keep him talking, keep him engaged and online, while the Miami field office moved into position. The tension in my house was electric. Agent Sarah sat beside me, Agent Mark stood behind me, and David was on a secure video link from his office in D.C., his face grim and focused. "Just be yourself, Mom," he said, his voice a calm anchor in my sea of nerves. "Be the woman he thinks you are. He's expecting love. He's expecting gratitude. Give it to him. And then we'll give him what he deserves." I took a deep breath, my fingers poised over the keyboard. I was ready. I was no longer the prey. I was the hunter, calling the predator into the snare. "I did it, my love." I typed, my fingers flying across the keys. "The money has been sent. Here is the confirmation slip. I'm shaking with excitement. You can finally come home." I attached the fake document the FBI had created and hit send. The response from Alexei came back almost instantly. "My magnificent Helen, you have made me the happiest man in the world. I am looking at it now. It's perfect. I am booking my flight. Our new life starts today." My heart was pounding. On the monitor, David gave me a small nod. "Keep him talking, Mom. Ask him what his plans are." I typed, "Oh, James, I can't wait to see you. What's the first thing we'll do?" As he began to type a long, flowery response about walking on the beach and drinking champagne, David's voice came through my earpiece, low and urgent. "Miami team is at the door. Stand by." On my screen, Alexei's message continued to unspool, a fantasy of a life he had no intention of living. "And I will hold you in my arms and never let you go." Then David's voice, no longer my son's, but the voice of federal authority, cut through the silence of the room. "Execute." I watched my screen, holding my breath. The three little dots showing that James was typing suddenly stopped. The cursor just blinked. 1 second. 2. 5. A lifetime. Then, a new message appeared on my screen. But it wasn't from James. It was from a different user, one that had just taken control of his account. Mr. Petrov. This is Assistant Director David Miller of the FBI. My mother, Helen, asked me to tell you that your flight has been cancelled. Permanently. I suggest you turn around and open the door for my agents. The vengeance was complete. It was a digital checkmate, delivered with surgical precision. I imagined the look on his face, the arrogant smirk wiped away by the cold, hard reality of the law. He hadn't just been caught. He had been personally and poetically defeated by the very family he had tried to destroy. The arrest of Alexei Petrov led to the swift dismantling of his entire network. The FBI recovered hard drives and ledgers that led to 3 other arrests. Most of my money, and the money of a dozen other victims, was recovered from the laundered accounts. But the true conclusion of this story was not financial, it was personal. I was no longer ashamed. I was empowered. In the aftermath, David asked me to do something I never would have imagined. He asked me to share my story. He asked me to become an advocate. So that's what I did. I started working with the FBI's Community Outreach Program, specializing in educating senior citizens about the dangers of online scams. I traveled to community centers and retirement homes, not as a victim, but as a warrior. I told my story, and in doing so, I took away its power to hurt me and transformed it into a shield for others. The loneliness that had once consumed me was gone, replaced by a profound sense of purpose and connection. The emotional resolution was the rediscovery of my own strength. The scammer had seen me as an easy target. In the end, I was the one who had targeted him, and I had not missed. I had not only reclaimed my money and my dignity, but I had found a new mission in life. A year later, I stood at a podium in the main auditorium at the FBI Academy in Quantico, addressing a class of new agents. David was in the front row, his face beaming with pride. "The criminals you will hunt are clever," I told the sea of young, eager faces. "They prey on vulnerability. But never, ever mistake vulnerability for weakness. Sometimes, the most unassuming person can be your most powerful weapon." I was no longer a target. I was a teacher. And my story was now part of the FBI's training manual. Online scammers prey on the best parts of our humanity, our capacity for love, trust, and hope. This story is a powerful reminder to always be vigilant and to never be ashamed to ask for help. Protecting yourself and your loved ones is a sign of strength, not weakness. Have you or someone you know ever encountered a scammer online? Share your story or advice in the comments below to help raise awareness. If this story of justice inspired you, please like and subscribe for more emotional tales where the good guys always win.